Hello and welcome. My name is Lori Rubin, and I have the pleasure of introducing my mentor, Tony Corbell, who's one of the top photographic lighting educators and commercial photographers. So Tony and I both worked for Nik Software years ago before DxO bought it, and Tony was the director of education. He co-wrote the book Nik Software Capture, the complete guide to using Nik Software's photographic tools, which is an awesome book, by the way. So he knows what he's talking about. He's a legend of light and the president of Camera Craftsmen of America. He has taught photographic classes in more than 20 countries and world capitals and in all 50 US states and so much more. You can find out more about Tony on his website at tonycorbell.com. We're very excited to have Tony Corbell joining us as he takes you through controlling the light and perfecting portraits using Nik Collection 2 by DxO. Thank you so much for joining us, Tony. It's fantastic having you here with us.
Well, thanks for that ridiculous introduction. It's funny when you've been at this for a while, you do kind of gain a few little awards and things along the way, and it doesn't mean you're a standout. It just means you've been doing this a long time, and so that seems like that's what it's been. I've been this will be, I guess I'm starting my 40th year in the photo industry, and so. It's been a while. It's been a long time. It's been a lot of fun, for sure. And I'm thrilled that you invited me, Lori. And thanks for all you do. And you keep everybody informed all the time on the latest techniques. And it's really great, really helpful. As Lori mentioned, we'll start out. I just want to go through a few slides to start us off. And let me just get you up to date with some of the things that I've been doing recently, show you some of the work, and then we'll wrap that part up. And then we'll dig into to actually using the software a bit, and let's talk a little bit about that. I've always been known as a lighting guy, and I'm not quite sure why that sort of happened the way it happened, but I worked with a pretty well-known photographer 30 plus years ago named Dean Collins, and Dean did a lot of workshops on lighting and light control, had a book and a series of videos called Fine Light, and it just seemed to us that it made sense to talk about light because no one was talking about light. No one was teaching light. Everybody was teaching posing in light and posing in business, and but no one was really talking much or teaching much on lighting or light theory. And so we kind of took it on as a business to do that, to really talk about that and try to help people understand there's a lot more to life than just on camera, on camera flash. And so it's just grown from that to, now 25, 30 years later of continually teaching lighting control. And then Nik Software fell in my lap a number of years ago, 12, 14 years ago. And boy, that changed everything. Because as we made the transition to digital, it was a challenge for a lot of us. And a lot of people weren't up to speed with some of the things that Photoshop could do. And then Nik came along and offered things that not only you could do better than in Photoshop, but things that you couldn't even do in Photoshop. For example, the selective editing. Here's a recent picture that we just did within the last couple of weeks. This singer in the studio. She's a fabulous singer, and we're going to go into details on editing this in just a little bit. But this is a recent picture. Two lights, one light, a main light on her, which is a 3x4 softbox. And in the background, we had a big bursting light with a green gel, which was just strong enough to give us a good wisp of light on the background. But I had it feathered slightly enough to give me a little bit of edge detail on her shoulder with just a little bit of separation there. So just trying to pay attention to the little details. We did this whole workshop with musicians. And so we did this fantastic saxophone player, Jermaine Mondane, who's local here in Muskogee, Oklahoma. What a talented man he is. He's just a giant with these exceptionally beautiful instruments of his. And this was in our warehouse studio. My friend Joe Glida, who's some of you know Joe. He's a very well-known commercial photographer. 38 years he shot food for Kraft food products in Chicago. I always tell everybody, if you've ever seen a box of mac and cheese, Kraft macaroni and cheese, Joe shot it probably. So that's what he does. And this was a shoot that he was on with me and helped me with a boxing tournament photo shoot that we did. That's a recent photograph I did in San Diego during the West Coast School that I teach in the summer in June down in San Diego. And this was a shootout that we had, myself and another instructor, Tim Meyer, who I just adore. We had dueling studios with the whole school watching us sort of compete, almost a Iron Chef situation. Here's my friend John Cornicello. If you've ever seen Creative Live, you've probably seen John. He prides himself. He retired years ago in the software business, but he loves to work and help out at Creative Live, and he likes to work with and help photographers that come into town. So he is the chosen world's greatest assistant. I mean, everybody loves working with him. He's very knowledgeable about all kinds of equipment. And I just did this nice little headshot for him recently, and when I was in Seattle. This is a recent image from a portfolio session for this fabulous model, Demi Smith. And we'll talk about this, and I'll edit this picture in just a few minutes for you, and talk about what I think about and where my brain goes when I look at this type of work and start going through it. Lighting wise, if you'll notice, over on the far left, you'll see there's this little small, like a miniature short picket fence, and I've got a strobe, my B1 laying, Profoto B1 laying on the floor, going through that fence, and it's just projecting shadows up on that wall. And then if you look over on the far right side, you can see the actual capture on the camera, and you can see what it looked like and where it started. But if I back up to this, you can see the shadows of that little miniature fence, and based on where I place the light on the ground, there's a couple of different distances there that will give you different results. One being the distance between the light to the fence here. The closer it is to the fence, the softer the shadows become. Further away, the harder the shadows become. And then the distance of the fence to the wall itself is another controlling. So I've got several different little controls there to change the effect of those shadows. But it's a real simple and quick and easy technique. You can use anything. You can use a ladder, shoot through the rungs of a ladder at a bit of an angle, tip the ladder one way or the other, and you've got great, strange looking shadows coming in. And it just adds interest and depth and shape and maybe a little dimension into your pictures. Something to think about. This is that shoot that Joe helped me with, Joe Gladden. This was 3 lights, one main light on the left of camera, a small 3-foot octabank, and then on the right side you can see that there's a strip light with an amber gel lighting her hair, her arm, and then in the background down below the apron of the boxing ring was a light with a red gel taped over it, just to give some interest. And then we turned on a fog machine just to put a little density in the air. And this wasn't lit at all. This is a rancher on location in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this was actually his barn, and that flag was actually on that side wall in his barn. And we're standing there talking. I just opened the door, and when I opened the door, I saw this light on his face, and these ice blue eyes kind of lit up, and I said, "Don't move." And so we just moved all the lighting equipment aside and just used the light that came through the window and through the open door. And people ask me all the time, "Do you like to work with available light?" I said, "Well, sure. I'll work with any light that's available, or however many strobes are available." But it does come down to, once you understand lighting, certainly the choice that you make is based on the knowledge that you have. So you don't all, like in our studio, we've got a 30-foot wide studio with 18-foot ceilings that face north. We've got this spectacular ambient window light coming in the front of our studio space all day long, and it's absolutely beautiful light. There are times, though, that you need to put strobe in there, and so you'll know the time and when to do it based on your knowledge and the subject, how the image is going to be used, what you're needing to accomplish. So here's a one light portrait, one of my favorite all-time portraits. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I liked him so much. This is Aaron from Santa Fe. He's a musician and artist. And this is a 3x4 softbox lighting him and the background both. He's fairly close to a dark background, a dark gray sweep, and pretty simple picture to take, but an impactful picture for me. And then it's one of my favorites. Same with this one, 3x4 softbox of my friend Donald Blake. People that have attended Santa Fe workshops over the years recognize him. He's been modeling for many years in Santa Fe, and he's an old actor, an old movie actor and rancher. And but this was a 3x4 softbox, which gave me these great shadows on his face. But look at the highlight down his left arm. It really gave us a real nice look on his arm. So all of that goes into consideration when I'm grabbing one of my lighting tools to decide what I'm going to do. Just real quickly, I'll mention our photographic workshops. You can go to Corbell Workshops or TonyCorbell.com, and you can see a list of all the workshops that we have coming up. God, we got one coming up to Liverpool, England. We've got a portrait webinar coming up here at the studio. Lots of things going on. Canon Advanced Workshop, Lightroom Learning Lab. If you'll use that, there's a double super secret code, Beatles. And if you'll put in that gets you a 50%, or sorry, $50 discount off any of the workshops there. So there's what the calendar page sort of looks like, and give you an idea of. You just click on the workshop you're interested in. It gives you all the details and the pricing and all the stuff that you need to know about. But we've got a lot going on. Our little studio's busy. That's just a quick low res screenshot of the Nik software captured book that I was very thrilled to get to write with Josh Halftail. Josh was product manager for Nik for a lot of years, and he's now senior product manager for Lightroom Mobile at Adobe. So pretty knowledgeable guy. A lot of stuff going into this book. It's a pretty thick book with a lot of information. We'll jump out of here and head over to Lightroom and start doing some editing, but I just wanted to put up this little page and just show you. If you need me for anything, just try my email, tony@tonycorbell.com. There's the website. And then you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Well, I've got a handful of pictures here to talk about and go through, and I wanted to, Lori's heard me say this a million times, and I used to pound this into everybody's heads when I was doing workshops on specifically on Nik software. I always had this idea that if you will look at the image and think about what you're going to do to it, think about what it needs before you just start working on it, I think you'll be more efficient with the edit. In other words, don't pick up your pen tool or your mouse and go immediately start working and start editing, because now you're looking around and trying to find things to fix. Look at it and just evaluate the whole thing first, and then start the edit process. And I think it might be a little bit more efficient for you. Now, this is just my theory, my ideas, but I think it makes more sense. This picture, I love this picture in color, and I think the color is good for her. But I love this look and the shadowing and the lighter gray background. I love the whole thing in black and white. So I want to go to first thing I'm going to do is go to photo. I'm going to go to edit in, and we're going to go to Silver Effects Pro. So I'm going to open Silver Effects, and I'm just a fan of software. And it's funny, when Silver Effects first launched, I think I did the first educational pieces about it worldwide. And so I've always had this soft spot in my heart for Silver Effects specifically, because I sort of was the first one to introduce it to the world, so to speak. And I've always had a great soft spot because of that. So I really like it a lot. As I'm looking through it here, you can see when you first open the interface, the Nik software engineering team at the time did really well. Was they always gave us a lot of presets, and they always gave us a lot of options. And over here on the left, you can scroll around and you can see all the variations that they put in as presets. And what's great about that is if you see something that you like, it might be that it's a pretty good place to start. And once you click on that preset, it doesn't mean you're done. It means that could be a good place to start. And that you can then move over to the controls on the right and make some adjustments from that. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that my first take, I like this dark glow has a good look. Let's go take a look at this. See if we like that. I'm not too mad about that. I like that one a bit, but it's a little bit contrasty for me. I'm gonna hide this preset library up here on the top left and just click that over like that. I'm gonna bring this contrast down just a little bit, but I'm kind of liking that a little bit. Now, one of the interesting things is that you can always you can go in close and you can look at some of the details of your pictures. Let me come down to about 50%. It's probably good here. Just so I can look at the face as I bring this structure down just a little bit, just to knock a little tiny bit of that edge off of that. I think that has a pretty good starting look to it. One of the things also is as you go into these controls here, you've got brightness, contrast, and structure. Pretty much all of the filters in Nik software have this little arrow here. Well, I came to learn that those are called twirlers, and if you click on any of those twirlers and they'll open up, there's always more information below and more controls that are sort of hidden away. Highlights, midtones, shadows that you can adjust the brightness on, like so. So if you look at the shadows, for example, this will just affect the lower level values in the photograph. So I can open up just those shadows a little bit. Or if the highlights are a little bit hot, I can bring down those highlights just a little bit with this top control. And then there's this other little strange one called dynamic brightness. And you can see that it does a real unique job of adding some densities and brightness into the picture without blowing anything out. So it's nice to have all these controls. And the same thing works with contrast. You can bump up the whites or the blacks. And there's a thing called soft contrast, which is a very unique. Notice the difference from here to here. It does increase contrast, but it does it in a soft manner, which I always thought was a unique piece of importance within Silver Effects Pro. Structure, same thing there. It's basically the contrast control of details between sort of sharp lines and edges. So once you're into structure, there's a lot of things you can do. For example, if you're shooting buildings and architectural work, this structure slider becomes very, very important to you. For me, in photographing people, not so much. But and then you can close those just for a second here and take a look down below. We've also got the selective adjustment, which I'll talk more about that in just a second. But then there's color filtration, there's film types, and then there's finishing and adjustment. Under film types, for example, you've got so many different types of films that are already pre-assembled for you. If there was a particular film that you liked, you can run over and there's a live preview update, which will show you what that film looked like and how that image might react with that specific film. So it's something to be at least mindful of. And it might be a good starting place based on what the image is, how you shot it, how you feel that you've processed the image. And then, of course, there's the finishing adjustments where you can set up some toning if you want to add in just a little hit of a sepia tone or maybe a little bit of a selenium tone, something like that, which I love that look of a selenium tone. And you've got varying degrees of each of these different tonalities and colors. Let's go to this light selenium tone. I kind of like that. And then below that, you've got different vignettes, burn edges, image borders, all of these things. And I'm not going to go through every piece. We'll be here all day if I do that. But there's a lot of options in here, and it would behoove you to take some time to to really go through all this and look through these drop-down menus, and you can see all these presets and different variations. You can pick one that you like here. For example, I always liked number 4. Pick number 4, then you can come down to this little button here that says Vary Border, and you can click on that, and every time you click on it, it changes very slightly so that no two images are exactly the same. It's real nice information to have. So that'll get us started. Let me just click Save on that, and let's go back into Lightroom. And I want to just show you that it comes back into Lightroom as an edited TIFF file. Now, one thing I would like to do is I want to go back in and show you probably the most important element of photographing people is understanding the need for and controls of skin. You know, it's not always skin softening that you need to do, but sometimes it's just changing and varying contrast. And that doesn't always necessarily mean softening. It means changing and variation of contrast. And so one of the things that Nik has done exceptionally well, and really nobody has been able to touch him, is the dynamic skin softener. It is probably my single most favorite of all time filters. And so if I click on dynamic skin softener, I'll come over to the eyedropper and I'll click on eyedropper. Even though this is a black and white image at this point, if I click on eyedropper, it'll find the right color, and I always go right between the eyes. So I'll click right there. Now I've just slightly softened her skin tone, and let's just zoom in and take a look at that. You can see, first off, look how the sharpness is held. Look at her eyelashes, look at the lips, look at the highlights, look at her hair. Look how crazy sharp all that is, and yet we've just been able to soften up her skin a bit. If it feels too plastic, if it feels too artificial, there are 3 different controls right here: small details, medium details, and large details. We can bring back any of those by just bringing down those, or bringing down all 3 of them slightly if we want to. Also, another bit of importance here, the engineering team at the time that this was produced didn't have any place to hide or place an opacity slider. So they hid it right under here. So if you click on the word control points, that'll open up a drop-down menu. Right there is the opacity. So this allows you to change the opacity of that current filter that you're working on. And it's in all these different filters within Color Effects Pro. So it's pretty important to know that that's there. Sometimes you want to apply something just, not at full strength, just at a little bit of a lower value. So it's pretty important to have that ability to do that. Okay, any questions about that?
Well, Tony, we do have a couple questions, if you want to take them now. Doug was asking, is structure like the clarity slider in Lightroom?
Well, clarity structure is interesting in that its job is to change contrast range on midtones. So structure doesn't necessarily work on a tone. Structure works based off of areas between sharp lines and objects. So clarity is great for hitting the midtones, but it doesn't help with anything on the high tones or the low tone, so to speak. It's really useful to have, but the structure does work a little bit differently than the midtones. So if everything had the same tone, clarity wouldn't know quite what to do with it all if it was a high tone or a low tone, whereas structure would know what to do with it. So this is a little quick headshot that I did for this. This is a photographer that was a former student of mine, and she had recently moved to Switzerland and came to a workshop that I saw her at, and she asked if I'd do a quick headshot. And we did. And she's a beautiful woman. You can see she's got a little bit, look how sharp this is, crazy sharpness here. But we need to work on this skin just a little bit. So just real quickly, I want to do 2 things with this. I'm going to go into, let me go back into Color Effects Pro, which, again, I didn't really identify the different product ranges here. Analog effects, color effects, define, which is noise reduction, sharpening, sharpening output, and sharpening for raw pre-sharpening, silver effects, and then Vivesa. And I'm going to talk about Vivesa a little bit more in just a second. But all of these are the 7 major product lines for the Nik Collection by DxO, and they're fantastic because they each do something really unique. Analog Effects Pro is a fun afternoon. Just find it, download the free trial, and try it. And it has a bunch of different camera effects, a lot of old school styling that you can do. You can get very, very creative in there. But within color effects, that's where all the main filters sort of reside. And that's where the bulk of my work is done within color effects and silver effects, those two. And then I'll use Vivesa for selective editing. Now, this what's interesting about color effects, the last filter that you applied and used is the filter that will pop up first when you open the software. So the last filter that I used that I actually saved was Darken, Light, and Center, which is a terrific tool that you can see. That border luminosity is kind of heavy. Let me just show you. That's what my file looks like when it opened. But it was applied, Darken, Light, and Center was applied to it on opening. So let me just, that's a little bit heavy. Let me just lighten that up just a bit. I'll open up the center just a little bit. Her face is pretty much in the middle of the picture, so I'll leave it alone. But you can hit this button here and place the center of that darkening and lightening wherever you want it. So that's a pretty good place to go. Now, if you'll notice, when you roll over all the filters, you'll see there's a small little icon over here on the far right. This is something that was added with Color Efex Pro 4 when it went from 3 to 4. And what it is a bunch of presets that the engineering team put into the software. For example, let me click on Add Filter. And now I can add another filter without overriding the darken, light, and center. So let me add Dynamic Skin Softener. And again, for me personally, I almost always, by default, go over, grab the eyedropper, put it between the eyes, click, and then I look at it and evaluate it and say, okay, so how am I looking? And did I do too much? I might have done a little too much there. Well, there's 2 ways of doing it. I can pull it back here individually by those 3 colors. I mean, those areas, small, medium, large, or I can just go right here on opacity and bring it back a bit. I think somewhere in here is a little bit more realistic looking. I think she looks fantastic, and she looks real, and that's kind of a biggie for me. I see so many people that are over retouching. I've got a great friend locally that who shall remain nameless, and he's doing a really good job. He's been doing this now for a while, 4 or 5 years, and he's really doing some great work. But boy, he uses a real heavy hand in his retouching, and I wish he used a lighter touch on the actual retouching. Okay, so we've got 2 filters now stacked up. I can add another filter. Let's say we want to add one more to one of our most used filters called Pro Contrast. And if you come down to Pro Contrast, let's just look over here at the presets, and you can see the thumbnails. There it is without any Pro Contrast. There it is with Auto Enhance. There it is with a sort of a dynamic contrast control. And there it is with a really strong contrast. I like this one, but it's a little bit heavy for me. So I'm going to go to that opacity, and I'm going to bring it down probably to right in here somewhere just over halfway, something like that. And here's before and after on that, so you can see what it did. There's before and there's after. Now, each of these individually, you can control your previews on each of the filters themselves, or let me close that. Then you can also compare by just clicking and releasing on this compare button, or you can put them up side by side and see where you started and where you are. And listen, this is all just for demonstration purposes. You guys might be at home looking at this going, boy, he sure is messing up a nice picture. Uh, so it's up to you, whatever it is that you choose to do and want to do with this stuff. So, okay, so I'm going to click on save that and just keep moving. I've got a whole bunch of things I want to show you, and we have zero time for what I have in mind here. But I do want to get to a couple of things. There's that other picture of John. I was going to take some time to edit that. I'm just going to run out of time. I'm not going to get to it. This was a musician, a great local musician here in Muskogee, great friend, Jim Paul Blair. He's got a traveling show that he does called Hankerin' for Hank Williams. And I was going to go in here and spend lots of time with Vivesa and talk about these individual areas. In fact, I'm going to do that real quick. Let me go into Vivesa real quick. Vivesa is a strange one. It's the, the color effects is a set of filters. Defined as noise reduction. Silver effects is black and white. Vivesa is defined as giving you the ability to selectively edit light and color. Now, that's the boilerplate, quick and easy way to define it. What it does, what it can do is pretty magical, and the patents around it are pretty intense. And what it does is something unlike anything else can do. It is, if I clicked on, for example, if I click on a control point, all it is about control points and controlling areas of color and tonality. If I click on this color red right here, I can click on that color red, and that round circle there shows me, I'm telling the software to control anything that's that color red in that area. And in fact, if I go up here, let me just open up the control point list. If I click on this little checkbox on the right, it shows me exactly what it just selected. And if I zoom into that, let me show you here. Let me get back out of that for a second. Let me show you, whoops. Look how precise, it's not really making a mask. I can't say it's a mask because I can't export it, but look how precise it is around these edges. Look at this precision job that it did of selecting that color, that exact color. That's one of the things, that's one of the key elements within the control points, the Vivesa U-point technology, and that is that it will find light and color, and it's not trying to just find RGB color. It's looking for RGB, it's looking for opacity, it's looking for all sorts of stuff. So it's looking for more than just color. So it's pretty helpful tool to have. What I would do with this, I would take my control point, and I'm going to go to this area on this wall back here. I just feel like it's a little bit bright. I'm going to go to the, let me check the size. I might go to that size right there and just drop that brightness quite a bit on that wall. I don't want it distracting from our guy. And so here's what I've got: brightness, contrast, saturation, structure, shadow density, warmth, red, green, blue, and hue. So I can control all of that. I can add a little bit of saturation to get more of that color back there, that green color, which kind of goes opposed to that red, which I kind of like. Now, I want to do the same thing over here. To make it simple, I'll just grab that control point right there, and I'll hold down the Option key on my Mac or Alt on PC. Click and drag, and it drags a new control point away with it. So now I've duplicated that control point. And that's an easy way to do it. You can also do a bounding box by doing click and drag and just draw a bounding box over multiple control points. And then when you control one, you control them all. See how that works? And of course, the car's protected, he's protected because they're in different tonality range. So it's a real clever use of a great tool. So anyway, let me keep moving. And I wanted to get for sure that we get some time to get to this family here. This family I didn't photograph, by the way. This beautiful picture was taken by my wife Mandy, who is a master photographer, and I'm thrilled we get to share. Excuse me, we get to share a studio together, along with a third photographer. A lot of people are familiar with, wonderful photographer named Kimberly Smith. So the three of us are in this great studio space, and we all do three different things. So we're not stumbling over each other or chasing each other's clients. Mandy shot this a couple weeks back, and I was on the shoot, and I lit it for her. So I contributed. Somebody's supposed to say, "Wow, that's beautifully lit." Well, thank you. Uh, but look at the posing. I mean, she knows what she's doing. This girl's pretty talented. Interesting thing about this, when this is that time of year where it worked to get them all together, not wearing coats, there's no ice on the ground or snow, there's no rain. It was just a beautiful day, but we were wishing it was a little bit more seasonal, wishing it was a little bit more fall-like. So one of the great things about Nik software is that there's so many filters that you can explore. One of our favorites that we have found over the years is a small little filter quietly just sitting over in the corner that nobody pays attention to, called Indian Summer. And Indian Summer is a filter that gives me the ability to change the season. So, for example, you look there, you can see dark and light and center was saved again. I'm going to go down to Indian Summer, and I'm going to click on that. Actually, before I click on it, I just want to show you look at the different options that it has available in the presets. That second one down's pretty good for me, so I'm going to click on that. Problem is that's way too much color, and it picks anything green and tries to make it fall season. So there's a couple of things that we can do. We can add, utilizing the same functionality in Vivesa, which is called U-Point. Those control points exist within all the filters in color effects. So I can either add an effect or I can take it away. Here, by clicking on the preset, I've added that effect all over the entire image. I'm just going to go over here to the control points, and I'm going to go minus. And so I'm going to take that tonality away from the grass. And I'm going to go Alt or Option, click, and drag, and I'm going to take it away from all this grass in the foreground by doing it that way. It's just fast and easy. And we've got way too much of this in the background, this color. So we need to take some of that away. So again, I'll do it this way. I can increase that size a little bit, but I do want some of that effect in some areas back there in the back. Look at that. And then if you drop down this menu here where the patches are, you can see the different types. What kind of leaves do you have where you live? Do you have sugar maples, or are they aspen trees in the high country, high elevations? But you've got some options. So it's pretty great. So let's just say we'll put that on right there, and I'm going to take it off a little bit right here behind them in this area. And I can see this greenery right here. And, you know, it helps a lot to know what trees are supposed to be evergreens. Like you can't do this kind of selective editing on pine trees and make pine trees looks like it's the fall time of year, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. So there's lots of options here. You can always go back to, you can take it completely away and start over again if you want. So there's lots of things you can do here, but it's a real nice way to work, to have the ability to pick on one of these little soft bits of tonalities and just give yourself some options. There's another one, of course, that's really interesting, that's called foliage. And with foliage, it takes anything that's green and enhances it. Just click on the green and look at the different options that you have in here, the different types of greens. You see that? Not everybody always has great color. You know, we live in the Southwest. Sometimes in the Southwest we don't get a lot of rain, and there are times when there's not great color. I'm going to leave it right there for just a second. Go add filter, and I want to go back to the filter list, and I want to go again down to Pro Contrast and take a look at what we get with Pro Contrast. Let's go to the presets and just roll through and just watch the image as I move through. Boy, do I like that, but it's too much of it. So let's go over here. Let's bring that opacity back a little bit. Now let's look at our before and after. Let me close this out so I can maximize my size. There's before and there's after. And if this is going to be a large wall portrait, that might be just about right. You might say it's too much. Bring that back a little bit. Okay, well, we can bring it back a little bit. Something like that. The main thing here is there are so many options. That's one of the things that Nik was always has been great at. 15 years or so. Nik has done a great job of giving the photographer such controls. This sax player, this is how it came out of the camera. This is how this one came out of the camera. This singer. By the way, let me just show you. I'm just going to zoom in. I'm just going to click to zoom 100%. You see this crazy sharpness? That was with the brand new Fuji GFX 100 megapixel camera. Look at that craziness. It's like, wow, we've got to have that. It's the biggest, the sharpest. Great. Now we got to soften it. So be careful what you wish for. Another musician here locally, my good friend Harley Ham, who's got a traveling show doing, he's a Stevie Ray Vaughan tribute show, and he is an amazing guitar player. And you know, this is one of those pictures, again, at first glance, it's like, you know, not a bad picture. And it is lit, by the way. This light on his face, that was a Profoto B10 strobe off camera, set to TTL and high speed sync, so that it brought down the value of the ambient light a bit. But if I edit that, let's just go into, again, we're going to go into edit in. We're going to go to Color Effects Pro 4. You know, we're running out of time. Obviously, this happens every single time I've ever done one of these things. All these filters are accessible through Photoshop, through Lightroom, and through DxO's own software. They've got their own editing software, which you really need to take a look at. I remember talking with the original inventor of the U-Point technology from Nik Software. Nik was actually named after this guy's initials, Niels Kokomor. And I remember talking to Niels one night late. We were talking about all the different plug-in products available. And I said, what do engineers look for? And is there anybody else that's doing anything as good as Nik these days? And he said, well, yeah, he said DxO. He always had great respect for DxO's engineering team. So, excuse me. Again, by looking down here at the metadata, that GFX right there tells me the reason this kind of slow opening, that's another 100 megapixel file. So that I knew that as soon as it was slow to open. So look at that. Can you believe that? That is 100 megapixels on location. Crazy, I tell you, crazy. Okay, so let me open up the filters. Let's take a look. Let's go down to a couple of things. I want to do that darken, light, and center, which will give me just a little bit of darkening on my edges. I don't really need to brighten up the center too much. His density looks pretty good, but I do want to darken those corners just a bit to draw the attention in. Imagine this is an album cover, for example. And then the shape, I want to make sure, I'll probably leave it where it is, but I want to look at the oval shape too. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of difference. I'd probably leave it right there with a rectangular shape on the darken, light, and center. Okay, now I want to maintain that, so I'm going to click Add Filter. And then again, let's go down. I want to look at the sunlight filter for just a second to see if I can add in just a little bit of color. And you see, even at the default setting, look what happens. There's before and there's after. It just adds a little bit. I might drop it back slightly and drop back that brightness slightly. But it adds just a little hit of early morning warmth, which is what I was looking for. Okay, so I'm going to keep that, and then I'm going to add in one more. I'm going to go back to my Pro Contrast again, and then I'll show you one more last thing here that we'll do to it. I'm going to bring up a little bit of contrast and a little dynamic contrast. And then here's where we started, before and after. Now, if you like what I've done here on this one, then I can go save recipe as, I'll save it as Harley and click OK. Now I can go through and I can apply that custom preset. It's now in my preset library. So I've created a recipe that's just for him, so I can go through his entire session and add the same thing across the board with one click. All of that makes it pretty great, and it makes, it gives me the ability to do things that not everybody can do. And I think that's the stuff that is most exciting for me in not just my photography, but in being able to edit these pictures. I'm in complete control here. I'm looking at this great picture of this musician, and it's just a little bit under for me. The whole thing's down. The whole picture feels a little bit out. But actually, I kind of like what's going on in the background. So, okay, well, let's just bring him up. We'll bring him into Vivesa. I'll apply a control point to his face. I think the hands look great. I'll probably choose to leave his hands alone, but if I add a control point from Vivesa, I'll place it right in here on his forehead, bring my size down, and let's just bring up the brightness a bit. Let's bring up the contrast a bit. I want to make sure that I get him down here. I want to warm him up just a little bit. And let's just take a look at that. From there to there. It's very, very subtle. But if you, again, as I showed earlier, if you go and take a look at the mask that you just created, look at this. It is so precise. Let's come up here kind of close. Look how ideally it went all the way around, and there's no soft edges anywhere. There's no jagged edges anywhere. It's crazy how accurate this is, and how when they wrote this thing, they really wrote a great program. Boy, Lori, I've just been going on and on and on. I just looked up; it's 11:51. What questions? What? We have any questions that I need to be talking about? Because I haven't slowed down talking yet.
Tony, can you go into color effects and show glamour glow?
Yeah, let me find the right picture for it. How about this girl? How about this girl with glamour glow? Glamour glow. There's along the way, every time I open a filter, I'll say something like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I used to use that all the time. That's my favorite filter." Glamour glow is one of those. Bleach bypass, I feel it's another great filter, and I feel a little bit of kinship with it because I sort of defined it and defined it to the chief technology officer at the time, who was helping design all the filters. And I said, "Well, you got this. Here's this look. Think about the movie 300." And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's a bleach thing." And I said, "Yeah, I think it was called skip bleach in the film days." Well, they came out with a filter, and then right after that called bleach bypass. So I've always felt that I had something to do with that. But same thing with glamour glow. Did you notice how slow that was opening? Again, look at the size of this file. This is a 100 megapixel camera. So, G, glamour glow. So look at the presets available in Glamour Glow. I'll just run through them real quick. There's very subtle glow. There's a strong glow. There's a strong glow, cool glow, warm glow. It's cool. Look at this. This is nice right there. Look before and after. You see how it just knocks the edge off everything? You know, when Laura and I worked together, we kind of came up with a phrase called polishing. Sometimes your pictures just need a little bit of polishing. And I think that's a good example of polishing. And then you can control selectively and globally, you can control the glow, the saturation, and the warmth of the glow. Interesting thing about this, when you start these edits, you've got some options. One of the things that I would highly recommend is that you edit globally and work your way down to selectively or granularly, if that makes any sense. So go ahead and do your global adjustments first. Do the big stuff first, and then come back down and do the small stuff. Was there anything specific on that, Lori?
I think it was
Or they
just
want to see the
general.
filter?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
looks great though.
Okay, so this would be another one that would be good to show. Let me go back to and show bleach bypass, because I think bleach bypass might be another one on this type of an image. And we can just kind of go through and look at these. That's pretty strong. Increased detail, bright. But you can see how you can mix filters. Like I could start there and then add dynamic skin softener and get back my skin, right? So we can add this in to here. Let's add that in next and make sure that we go in and start sort of piecing out the image, so to speak, until you get it down to where you want it to be. So there's so many options that you will find your way through these filters, especially. And golly, I mean, look at all the different film effects: modern, nostalgic, vintage. And in fact, this is the kind of picture that might benefit from going old school. Let's go back to, let me pick that. Oh, that's the big one. Oh, well, at this point, it's just a TIFF, so it doesn't matter. Go to Photo Edit In, and let's go to Analog Effects. Let me just show you the interface of analog effects. Pardon me. Some people, love the new exciting world of the old. Everybody wants to go back and look at film. They want to go back and look at the Holga camera, and they want to go back and look at all the old school methods, and wet plates and alternative processes, and all of that's very cool stuff to do. Well, all of it exists inside this little product called Analog Effects Pro. You can go in and pick, oops, let me let it finish loading, I guess. Big file, really big file. Okay, fine, I got this, go away. Look here at all the different camera types. Classic camera, black and white, color cast, subtle bokeh, vintage cameras, toy camera, wet plate. You see some of the options? Look over here. You want dirt and scratches? Let's put on some dirt and scratches. What kind of dirt and scratches do you want? Look at all the options for dust and lint. Look at the options for scratches. This is cool stuff. This is real fun stuff. And then you can change and affect how much of those scratches you want to use. So you can do it with the strength, and it's almost the opacity of the type of scratches. So, you can get pretty funky with some of this. So it's pretty exciting stuff. But to do it, you got to get in there and play. You've got to get in and spend some time with it. Light leaks, that's a fun one. You can go in and look at all the different light leaks that you can work through, and there's controls on those as well. So I'll tell you, this is one very, very meaty software. All the Nik Collection works the same way, and whether you access it from the DxO editing program through Photoshop. Here it is in Photoshop. If I edit it in Photoshop, it almost, depending on how you set it up, if I open a filter, click on the filter drop-down menu, and there's the Nik Collection, there's everything I need there. And if you open something, then come back to Photoshop, then all the Nik stuff is set aside as a separate layer. If, for example, you want to save those control points, if that's something that you need to save, then you will need to add filter, convert for smart filter. And if you'll notice, look what happens over here in your layers palette. Your background layer now became layer 0. So now it's a smart object when you apply the Nik product. So pretty good stuff. Lots going on. And I'm anxious now that DxO has this product, and I'm just thrilled that they have this product, and I'm excited to see what the next step is and see what they're going to add next. And no doubt the future looks really, really bright for this product range, and which I have such a warm, soft spot in my heart for, as does Lori. So
Yes, we do indeed. Tony, thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Tony's video will be available, as well as some other webinars on our YouTube channels. So if you just search for DxO or Nik Collection by DxO, you should be able to pull up our past webinars as well. So Tony, I'm going to let you say the last words here. Again, thanks everyone for joining us, and Tony for doing a great presentation.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's like as I say, it's obviously when you start doing this, the more you know and the more that you've sort of processed and worked through for yourself, the quicker you get, the more this stuff becomes second nature, and the more presets that you make, more recipes you make, and the quicker you can move. My wife's got a preset that all of her high school seniors, if shot outdoors, they all get a tiny hit of contrast, tiny hit of saturation, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. She's got a recipe, and she runs that recipe on every one of them. And it just then she gets to start editing, but she's already done her global adjustment on opening, so it's really great. And you'll find your own way through that, and it's all so subjective that you just need to give yourself a little bit of time to learn it all.
Okay, well, I think that does it. Be sure to check out Tony's website. It's tonycorbell.com for his workshops and just to read about his bio, which is so long I could only take a snippet of it. So, but I hope you all enjoyed it. And Tony, thank you so much. It's great hearing your voice and just watching you do your marvelous work. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for taking some time for us this morning. Thanks. Appreciate it. And hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Yes. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.